the folks up there, please take a seat. We're ready to start the fourth panel for today. You've been a fantastic audience all day. Thank you. Tell that to my wife. Anyway, we're ready to start Future Prospects, Trends, and Opportunities. Our first spokesperson, who I introduced last night, is Dr. Boaz Ganor, the Executive Director of ICT, the Deputy Dean of the Lauder School of Government Diplomacy and Strategy. As I mentioned yesterday, he's on sabbatical at Stanford. He's also teaching at the University of California at Berkeley and lived to tell the story and is here, alive and well. I should mention that in the front row is Professor Amnon Rubinstein. Please stand, Amnon. Please stand. Professor Rubinstein is the recipient of the Israel Prize. That's the highest prize that can be awarded in the state of Israel. He's a former Minister of Education. He's a former Dean of our law school and former President of our university, and just one heck of a great guy. And sitting next to him is the Provost of our university, Professor Rafi Melnick. Please stand. Professor Melnick, his expertise is in economics, and in a number of conferences like this, he's discussed the impact of terrorism on economics. He's a former Chilean. He's an expert in economics. He used to work for the Bank of Israel, former paratrooper. And we're very glad to have both of you here sitting in the front row. Without any further ado, since I introduced Dr. Boaz Ganor yesterday, you don't have to hear any more background checks. He's clean. Boaz.
Good afternoon. Well, I've planned to give a different lecture from what I want to share with you right now. We had a prior discussion, Daniel, Sir Lawrence, and myself, and I've decided to change the topic of my lecture based on this discussion. And actually what I want to do in the coming minutes I have is to share with you some of my thoughts about the main problems, main dilemmas that we face today in confronting the phenomenon of terrorism in general terms and the phenomenon of global jihadi terrorism in particular. The discipline or the sub-discipline of counterterrorism, homeland security, has been developed and actually flourished, especially after 9/11. We see more and more scholars which started to be interested in the subject. This is, of course, as an outcome of the concrete need, and I would say maybe even the general support that official government bodies were given to the academic field of counterterrorism and homeland security. And I do believe that what we've seen today and yesterday in this conference and the amount of people that came and the quality of the people represent this elaboration of the field of counterterrorism and homeland security in the academic scholarly arena. Yet we see that those scholars, those experts, do not necessarily see eye to eye on some crucial, even basic concepts of terrorism, of counterterrorism. We didn't even start to solve the issue of the definition of terrorism. I mean, we are conducting conferences on terrorism and we have research on terrorism, but I'm not so sure we all agree on one acceptable definition of the term terrorism. I will not deal with it right now, although I'm a freak of definition of terrorism. But I think that there is one goal that we all share. We are trying to find better policies, better practices, better strategies in confronting, in contending with this phenomenon of terrorism. And it seems that we didn't got too much or close enough, I would say, to achieve this goal of having one acceptable approach, one acceptable policy on counterterrorism. Furthermore, we do disagree sometimes on the basics understanding. Even before developing a policy, you need to understand what is the nature of the opponent, what is the ideology, what are the strategies, the modus operandi of the opponent. Even on that, we have crucial disagreements and debates. And one of those disagreements was published in a few months ago. And I refer to this debate, maybe even I would use the term quarrel, between two great scholars, a friend of ours, I refer to Bruce Hoffman and Mark Sedgman, that were debating on the nature of the threat of global jihad. Mark Sedgman, in his second book, dealing with what he called the leaderless jihad, was pointing out that the biggest danger of international terrorism today does not come from hierarchical terrorist organizations, from organizations like Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is maybe passé in a way. What he was referring is that we are facing an elusive, dynamic, amorphic type of networks which is combined by homegrown terrorists and other type of specific nodes within different networks that are threatening the Western society, the Muslim countries, and so on and so forth. Bruce Hoffman was pointing out that on top of that, we should not turn a blind eye to the threat of hierarchical terrorist organization, and maybe even especially Al-Qaeda, headed by bin Laden, Zawahiri, and the rest of the people. And I think that we saw even today, in the presentations of today, some support to Bruce's argument. Just briefly remind myself the presentation of Rohan Gunaratna that showed how well hierarchical Al-Qaeda still is. So this is a basic debate that was not solved until now. But if there is one thing in common that I believe we all understand and agree here in this room and in the field of the research of counterterrorism, is that terrorism at the end of the day, it's no more and no less than a mean. Terrorism is a mean that was constructed in order to achieve a goal. And the goal could be actually different types of goals, but if there is one common denominator to all of those goals, is that all of them have a political end that they are trying to achieve. In the history of terrorism, we see terrorist organizations that try to promote and achieve different types of goals that have been motivated by different grievances, socio-economical grievances, separatistic grievances, nationalistic grievances, extreme ideologies, communism, fascism, and so on and so forth, anarchism. And now we are facing terrorism that is being motivated and promoted by religious grievances. But even this religious type of terrorism, I would argue at the end of the day, has a political end. When we're talking about people that are trying to create a caliphate state, this is a political goal that they are trying to achieve. So still, the common denominator for terrorism is this understanding of terrorism as a political mean to achieve a political goal. But as an outcome of that, understanding that the biggest threat of terrorism today, of international terrorism today, is what we refer to as global jihadi terrorism, I do believe that we have to namely call a spade, and not try to hide behind the bush. And we should say that the problem today is a problem that comes from a certain niche within the Muslim world. We are talking about extremists within the Muslim world. Although, unlike many of some of my colleagues, I do not refer to the war of terrorism, to the campaign of terrorism, as a war between religions. I do not see this as a war between Islam against the rest of the world. I would argue that this is a war between cultures. It's a war between the culture of Islamic radicalism against the rest of the world, including, by the way, the vast majority of the Muslims themselves, which are being regarded as infidels, no less than Christians and Jews by those Islamists and those extremists. But when I point out this in lectures which I give, it's very common that I face criticism. And I would say I face two types of criticism, opposite criticism. On one hand, some of my friends are saying, Boaz, you are trying to be politically correct. First of all, it doesn't suit an Israeli to be politically correct, so don't even try to do it. And then they said, you are miscalculating the situation, because Islam, by the nature of this religion, is a political religion, maybe more than any other type of religion, and therefore this political dogmatism is rooted within Islam. So we should not refer to niches within Islam. We actually should point out that we have a problem with this religion. Well, I beg to differ. I beg to differ not in order to be politically correct. I beg to differ because I don't think this is the case. And you know what? Further than that, even if it would have been the case, it would have been our goal, or should have been our goal, to see to it that it will never come to the point of a war between religions, a war between Islam against the rest of the world. Why? At least because of one reason, because if this would be the case, we are all doomed. And when I say we, I refer to the whole world, the civilized world, all humanity. There is no way that one religion will win a war against other religions. It will be an extermination type of war, endless type of war. So this is one type of criticism. The other type of criticism says that, why do you point out Islam at all? Well, we are talking about extremism in general terms. This is not a problem of this religion or another religion. In the history, in the human history, in the recent years, last century, we saw other types of very severe extremism, very dangerous extremism. Extremists, talking about fascists and Nazis and communists and so on and so forth, that were using violence maybe even more than those global jihadists are using. So you should not even point out the fact that we have a problem here with jihad, global jihadists, Islam, and so on and so forth. I would like to share with you an anecdote that I witnessed, experienced a few months ago. I was invited to give a lecture in Europe, and the lecturer before me was a religious cleric, a Muslim religious cleric coming from Sudan. He has also a PhD, a very smart person, and literate in English. And he was standing there and he was preaching to the audience, and he was saying, why do you refer to this problem as a problem of Islam? Islam preaches for goodwill. Islam is a merciful religion. Why do you refer to this as jihad? Do you know what is jihad? Jihad is doing the good deed and not killing people and hurting people. This is what is called big jihad. And not this violent small jihad that some people refer to. And when I was giving my lecture immediately after him, I said to him, my friend, you are right. And thank you for sharing this with us. It's important for us to know. But you know what, between you and me, I don't really understand why did you bother to fly over to Europe from Sudan and to preach to a Western audience and to tell them that this is not jihad and this is not Islam. Instead, you should have stayed in Sudan, or maybe go to Iraq or other Arab and Muslim countries and say to those extremists that are beheading innocent civilians under the name of Islam and under the name of jihad, tell them that this is not jihad and this is not Islam. So what I'm trying to suggest here, that we have to find a common ground between those two ends, the political correctness end and the extremist end, and by saying there is a problem in Islam, and it's an internal problem in Islam. It's not a problem with the religion, it's a problem within the religion. And actually, if you would ask me, I do believe that what we face today is not a war between religions, it's a war first and foremost within religion. And what is needed to do is that the Muslims will take the responsibility and stand against those extremists. The ultimate responsibility right now is for the Muslims to save Islam from the Islamists. And I do believe that our task, the task of the scholarly community that is gathered here, is to, first of all, to point this out, and second, coming from multidisciplinary approaches, we're having people from all of those academic and scholarly approaches, sit together and try to find ways to create better policies that will have better international alliances and cooperations. By the way, not just international when we talk about the global arena, but also the same thing has to be adopted in the local arena when we talk about Muslim community in the Western society. At the end of the day, the responsibility to allocate this radicalization trend is the responsibility of the Muslims themselves. The responsibility of the rest of the world is to find the ways to help them and to jointly have better solutions in countering this phenomenon. Thank you very much.